This is a story my mom told me from her childhood. I've put it in my own words, but have not changed any of the details or events. Memories are odd. Every time you reflect on one, you skew it just a bit, and after years and years, your memories become a disfigured version of what actually happened. It's kind of like that grade school game, telephone, where you whisper something to the person next to you, and then they whisper what they think you said to the person next to them, and so on. And by the time it gets back to you, the phrase being passed around is nothing like the original phrase. I often wonder how different my childhood was compared to how I remember it. How many details I've changed, how many things I recall that may not have happened at all. I fully accept not everything is as I think it was, and I'm fine with that. One memory, though, haunts me in vivid and precise brushstrokes. Funny how the ones you'd rather forget seem to be the ones that refuse to relinquish their clarity. The memory I'm referring to takes place October of 1986, just outside of Dallas, Texas. I still remember the dress I was wearing. It was yellow with white polka dots, long sleeves, and went all the way past my ankles, as per my parents' religious requirements. I hated that dress, but at 11, my parents didn't yet think I was capable of choosing appropriate attire for myself. I hated it because it was rather hard to move in. My mother had made it herself and it was pretty tight from about mid-thigh down. Anyway, my sister, who was a bit older than me, had just gotten her driver's license and she wanted to take the car out. Our mom said she could, as long as she took me with her. She agreed, grabbed the keys, and off we went. We left around 6-ish. It was already getting dark, but my sister, who was still a little uncomfortable behind the wheel, wanted to drive in the evening so she would have less traffic to deal with. We also stuck to side streets and back roads until we worked our way to a stretch of relatively desolate highway. We'd been driving around listening to the radio and embracing our first true taste of freedom for about an hour. We were just circling back and forth along the same 10 or so miles of US Highway 80 between Mesquite and Forney, Texas, just outside of Dallas. It's a little busier there now, but back then it was just a 10-mile stretch of trees and railroad tracks. It was there that we heard the engine ka-clunk, ka-clunk, and my sister's novice driving skills became apparent as the car sputtered a few hundred yards before dying and rolling to a stop. We'd run out of gas, and the closest gas station was a few miles back. This was before cell phones, so the only thing we could do was grab the gas from the trunk and walk back to the station. Remember that poorly constructed polka dot dress? Well, this is where that comes into play. After about 100 yards, it was obvious it would be more trouble than it was worth for me to hobble behind my sister for several miles. So she handed me the keys and told me just to wait in the car. I got back in the car, locked all the doors, and watched the rear window until my sister was out of view. I was a very meek, timid, and easily frightened little girl, and it didn't take long for the dark to infiltrate my psyche. There were no streetlights, and I hadn't seen another car since my sister left. The only light was from the moon, which was full enough that I could see the thick tree line about 30 yards off the road. After what seemed like an eternity alone in the dark, my fear and nerves began to really fray. It was completely silent. Not even the crickets were chirping. I became acutely aware of just how unnervingly silent it was. I wanted it to end, but at the same time, I was afraid of what might end it. So I sat petrified, almost anticipating to hear the boogeyman's whispers in the wind at any moment. All I could think to do was try to fall asleep, and hopefully by the time I woke up, my sister would be back. I leaned the seat back and closed my eyes, and tried my best to block the boogeyman from my mind. Another 15 minutes or so passed while I turned this way and that, trying to find a halfway comfortable position. It was in the midst of this fidgeting that an eerie feeling ran down my spine, a feeling that I was not alone, a feeling of unshakable dread that I was being watched. I was laying on my side facing the steering wheel, looking downward at the floorboard, my back to the passenger window, my eyes pressed tightly shut. I was afraid to open them, afraid of what I couldn't see, of what I might. I took a deep breath, counted to 3, and opened my eyes. There was nothing there. I took another breath and quickly shifted my gaze to the driver's side window. I exhaled, seeing nothing there either. You're okay, I told myself. I sat there wide-eyed, staring straight ahead, focusing on the steering wheel for another 10 or so minutes. That's when all at once and all of a sudden I felt stricken with a paralyzing sense of terror, and the voice in my head just started repeating, "Don't turn around, don't turn around, don't turn around." My heart began racing faster in my chest. My body stiffened and my limbs felt so heavy as an inner panic had started to take hold. I tried telling myself that it was all in my head and there was nothing outside my window, that I was just working myself up. To my utter horror, however, a shadow shifted off the driver's side seat, then filled it back up again, followed by 3 taps on the glass behind me. That shadow had been covering that seat since before I had ever opened my eyes, as I had hardly blinked since opening them. That means whoever or whatever was outside the car had just been standing there, watching me. As this terrifying thought ran through my head, there were 3 more taps, louder this time. I knew I couldn't just ignore them anymore. I mustered up all the courage I could and turned to meet the tapper. "Hello?" I nervously whispered, as my eyes tried to focus on the figure outside the window. "Aren't you a little young to be out here all alone, little lady? Where are your parents?" His voice was deep and had an authoritative tinge to it. As he spoke, chills went down my spine. Suddenly the air felt cold and the night felt sinister. The man was abnormally tall, the top of the window well below his chest line. His hands were extremely vascular and his fingers long and needly. As my eyes tried to focus, he bent his enormous, slender frame over enough to peer into the window. He was clean-shaven, revealing extremely sunken cheeks and eye sockets. His eyes themselves were bulging outward and seemed too large for his face, and while it could have just been the night, I swear they were completely black. "Little girl," he repeated. "I asked you, where are your parents?" I'm with my sister. He cut me off and pulled out a flashlight, shining it into the car. "I can't understand you. I'm gonna have to ask you to roll down the window. It's all right. I'm a cop." The ambient light from the flashlight allowed me to see he was in fact in an officer's uniform, and a brief moment of relief hit me. Rolling down the window, I spoke a little louder. "I'm with my sister. We broke down and she went to get gas. I couldn't go with her because I can't walk in this dress." A slight grin came across his face. "Ah, I see. So you're out here all alone then," he said almost gleefully. Yes, sir. Just until my sister gets back." "And when will she be back?" "The closest station is a few miles away. That could take a while." His tone came across as a predator toying with its prey. My relief was starting to dissipate as a familiar feeling of looming dread returned. I don't know. She's been gone a couple hours now, I guess." He said. "Tell you what, why don't you come with me? We can go get your sister, and you won't have to walk. How does that sound?" It hadn't dawned on me until then, but I suddenly realized that I hadn't seen any headlights in either direction for 20 minutes by this time. I turned to look out the rear window and started to tremble as I confirmed there was, in fact, no car in any direction within eyesight. But where's your cop car?" I almost hesitantly asked. "Right over there, just through the trees." He pointed to the tree line in the distance. "Haven't you ever wanted to ride in a cop car?" "I think I should just wait here for my sister to get back. She shouldn't be much longer." "Look, it's past curfew. If I don't get you home soon, I'll have to arrest you. Your parents won't like it if you get arrested now, will they?" Now, a new fear entered my 11-year-old brain. The fear I could be arrested, but my instinct said not to go out. "I'm sorry, sir," I said, rolling up the window. "I really should wait for my sister." As the window was about an inch from closing, he stuck his fingers through, trying to stop me, and I ended up smashing them between the door and the glass. He shrieked in pain, pulling his hand back. "You little bitch, you smashed my fingers, you bitch." I'm sorry, I said through the now closed window, backing up in my seat as far from the door as I could. He started pulling on the door handle violently and shaking the car back and forth. "Open this freaking door. Do it now. Do you know how long you will go to jail for resisting arrest?" He pulled out something that looked like a nightstick and started banging on the roof of the car and the window. "Open this door or I will smash it in. If you don't open it right now, this is going to be so much worse for you. I swear to God." He smacked the window again, and a spiderweb of cracks erupted from where the club struck. Now I knew it was only a matter of time before he got in, and was afraid he'd follow through on his promise of making it worse. Okay, I said through frantic sobs, not even realizing I had started crying. "Well, all right then," he said, suddenly completely calm. "Go ahead and step out of the vehicle and follow me to my car." Yes, sir." I rolled up the window and stepped out of the car. "This way," he said. Tremors ran through my body as I slowly began to follow the man. I knew something wasn't right, and all I could think was that he was leading me into something unspeakable behind those trees. I wanted to run, but with my dress I wouldn't make it far before he caught me, and where would I go even if I could? We were about halfway to the tree line, 40 feet away, when headlights lit up the field we were standing in. "Come on," he snarled, grabbing my arm and pulling me along at a hastened pace. We were 10, maybe 15 feet from the trees when the shout started. The headlights were now beaming directly on us, like spotlights from heaven, when several voices, all female, started yelling in our direction. "Get away from that man, little girl. That man is not a police officer. He is a bad man. Let her go, you demon. God is watching you. Little girl, come to us. Get away from that bad man." They sent a barrage of shouts until the man let me go and ran into the trees. "Run to us, little girl, as fast as you can before the bad man comes back." So I ran, as hard as I could, ripping my dress in the process. 2 women in thigh-length dresses stood outside the open side doors of an old white church van. Get in, they urged. I jumped inside into the arms of another woman and heard the door slam behind me. There were 6 ladies altogether inside the van, all older, larger women. "You are safe now, little girl. We won't let the bad man hurt you," one of them assured me. My sister, I have to wait for my sister," I said through tears. "We will wait here with you, sweetheart, and keep the bad man away," another assured me. Every so often they would start yelling for me not to look out the window and pull me into their chest to shield my eyes. But curiosity got the best of me, and I peered out against my better judgment, prying my eyes sideways from the woman who was holding me. What I saw still haunts my nightmares. It was the man, now completely nude, running down on all 4s and out of the trees and through the field between us. He seemed to be moving at inhuman speeds, his long limbs articulating in an almost unnatural way. Sometimes he'd come as close as a few feet from the van and make the most disturbingly guttural grunts and growls. The ladies tried distracting me by singing nursery rhymes and gospel hymns, and any time he got too close, they would roll down the windows and shout him back. He'd disappear and reappear like clockwork, until finally my sister appeared, gas can in hand, on the road behind us. I told my sister what had happened, and she said the worst feeling had come over her, and she'd been running the whole way back. The ladies surrounded us, forming a big circle around the car as my sister filled it with gas. The man was now standing 10 feet outside the tree line, his clothes back on, watching us the whole time. He looked and never spoke as they chanted at him not to get any closer. When the car finally started, the ladies said they'd follow us to make sure we'd make it home. We went up half a mile and made a U-turn to head back, and as we crossed past the place we'd been stranded, the man was on all 4s, completely nude again, sniffing at the pavement where we'd been stranded. The old church van was behind us almost the whole way home. I never took my eyes off it. I was afraid that somehow the bad man would get us if they weren't there. But as we turned on our street, I lost sight of them, and they didn't turn in behind us. Nor did I see a single vehicle pass on the cross street. Maybe they just turned around, I thought at the time. My mother was waiting out on the front porch for us as we pulled up. It was obvious she had been crying. She said she'd gotten an awful feeling something bad happened to me. I told her everything that had happened, and she called the police who came to the house to take a statement. I thought that was the last time I'd ever have to hear about the bad man. But unfortunately, a couple months later, I saw a news story about a girl that had gone missing from a park close to the area where our car had broken down, and witnesses said the last they saw of her, she was talking to a tall, lanky man in an officer's uniform. Sometimes I think back on that night, and I shiver when I think of the bad man. Other times, though, I think of the ladies in the van, how they showed up just in time, how they vanished without a trace. I wondered then, and I wonder now, if maybe they were angels.